Hello viewers, well good to see many of you enjoyed our Project Cars coverage last week. Of course that was running on the PS4, it's coming out for Xbox One and PC as well, but with the analysis being on PS4 it's the first opportunity to see how well the game is converting to consoles, and of course the inevitable comparison with Driveclub, which we can see here, the two games. Highlights the real difference really between 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. Driveclub at 30 frames, Project Cars aiming for the 1080p 60 frames. It's been noted by viewers that the Project Cars isn't all running at 60 frames at the moment. No, it's still in a period of optimization, and there's some blur effects, not down to the hardware in recording. That is actually what you see at the moment. No doubt it's all still a work in progress, but either way it's converting well, and there's still a way to go in terms of development. Now when you're looking at graphical fidelity between the two systems, there are two key things to highlight. Firstly, the fact that Driveclub runs at 30 frames per second. That means they can throw in a stack more detail. The 60 frames per second title is unlikely to ever really compete with a title running at 30 frames in overall detail. But in terms of fluidity and movement, that's where Project Cars comes out the winner. Now, these are two very different games, and when you're running a simulator with a stack of depth to it, you really do need that extra frame rate. And driving games in general benefit from that. For me in Driveclub, if there was a 60 frames per second option to turn off some detail and run it at 60, I would run it at 60 because I just prefer the frame rate and I get a lot from that. But these are two very different games and very different approaches. I think the other thing to take into account is that Project Cars is a multi-format game, whereas if you take Forza Motorsport and you take Driveclub, they're built dedicated for their format, within the architecture, confined to that format to maximise it. So it's very unlikely that third parties are ever going to get as much out of the hardware as the first party developments, unless they have a lot of funding behind them. So it's only the very biggest companies that manage to get that far in maximising and producing teams for every format. So there's all of these challenges. But I think what's important about Project Cars at the moment is it's about investigating the size and interest of console gamers in a simulation, in a racing simulation, and these have always been the core domain of the PC. Now, if Project Cars doesn't do very well, then it's likely you'll see less simulations coming to console and they'll just stay to the PC. But if it does well, then who knows what the future could hold. You could see a lot more simulation titles coming. It really does depend on what you prefer in terms of your gaming. Ultimately for me, I go for all driving games. I don't care if it's Ridge Racer or if it's Assetto Corsa, if it's Project Cars or if it's Driveclub. I go for all of them. I just love racing games. I don't care if it's Mario Kart. And the way I look at it is if you've got one racing game coming out every 6 months, well that's no problem for me. It gives me enough time to play each game to death and move on to the next one. Ultimately I feel that the type of game that Project Cars is attracts me as a gamer because it has more challenge over a longer period of time. But it's interesting to see how you, the viewers at home, pick up on it, what you see and what you like. Yes, on the one hand there's graphical sort of competition between all the different games, but ultimately it comes down to the gameplay, and that's where I'll leave the decision for you. But that's it from me for now. Do click on any of the links at the end of this video to see the other parts of Project Cars action, and there'll be more from me very soon.